Thank you, everyone, for attending our February meeting. I'm very happy that we are going to have Pauline today showing us their journey with Agicap. They were one of the first companies that started using OpenFGA. So thank you for trusting in the project. And so let's do our usual stuff. So this is the agenda, usually the same agenda. This is us. You probably know us from always the same crew for a while. And in general, now what we do is, if you are new to the meeting, it's the first time you join, we love to know you. So if you can share what you do, where you're based, what you're doing, and what your company you work for, why are you interested in OpenFGA? If you are deploying it, where you are, all of those things can be very interesting for us and the community. So I'll give you some space to jump and introduce yourselves if you are up to.
Can I start?
Yes, please, Roman.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm Roman. I'm based in Madrid. I just started to contribute to the OpenFGA and just decided to be closer to the community and to join to this meeting. Now I'm working in SEMrush. At the close to the summer, it will be Adobe, because Adobe bought us. Something like that.
Good. Thanks, Roman. Anyone else?
My name is Alan Sutton. I'm a software architect at SoftPro in United States. We're in title and escrow industry, and we've been using OpenFGA now on one of our products for about a year. So just kind of working towards maybe rolling it out to more areas of the company and more products that we have available. So definitely interested in joining here.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Okay, good. So let's continue. So we've shipped a few things in the last month. In the OpenFGA side, mostly small improvements and bug fixes. So there's a CV there on our side that in some cases we could be returning the wrong value for check. It's not common, but it could happen. So make sure you upgrade to the latest version. And thanks Jeremy and Van Tuan and Fayez for helping out. All of you contributed to the OpenFGA release. We also released a few new versions of SDKs. We had shipped years ago an endpoint called StreamedListObjects. For some reasons, we haven't included in the SDKs. Now supported in all the SDKs. We are going to be moving to support to leverage more StreamedListObjects in the future. So if you are using list objects today, I recommend you to kind of look at it and evaluate switching to it, because we believe it's going to be kind of the future of that endpoint. And then a lot of small fixes, a lot of community contributions too in SDKs. So that's it. And then no further ado, and I will ask Jamie and Pauline to join us here and share their journey in Agicap. I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
So hi, everyone. I'm Pauline. So I'm the head of engineering at Agicap. And today I'll share with you our journey with OpenFGA. So how we adopted it, how we scaled it, and how it makes adding new authorization features incredibly fast for us. So first, a few words about Agicap, just to say it's a European fintech helping companies manage their cash flow. And so we have a multi-product platform with many independent squads. So this context is important because it means our authorization system, needs to be both flexible and usable by many different teams. So before OpenFGA, authorization was spread across all of our services with inconsistent implementation. So each team has its own its own approach. Sorry. So we needed a centralized system that could handle our complex hierarchy while being simple enough for all teams to use it. So that's why we chose OpenFGA in the first place. So here's the big picture. So all of our services actually go through our .NET facade, which is called Rebecca. So it's for relationship-based access control center of Agicap. So it's easier to talk about Rebecca than to talk about the AM system based on OpenFGA. So that's why we did this. We chose this name, and so. Rebecca and OpenFGA run on separate Kubernetes pods, which was not the case at first, but I'll explain that later on how we scaled it. And I'll explain why we built a facade in front of OpenFGA. So basically, why we build it instead of letting all of our microservices and modular monoliths, all our services call OpenFGA directly. So 3 reasons. First, abstraction. So OpenFGA, we consider it as an implementation detail because services don't know it exists. So they all go through our .NET service Rebecca with specific business-oriented APIs, and we cover the complexity of OpenFGA. Even if it's simple, it's better for us to abstract it. So when we upgrade, for example, the OpenFGA versions, nobody notices. And we can aggregate multiple OpenFGA calls into one single Rebecca request. And also because we migrated from an old system, sometimes we had like a mix of an OpenFGA call and a call to another system which was not migrated first. So it was really simpler for us to put a facade on this. And second reason was security. Because OpenFGA at the time itself had no permission system for its own API. So anyone who can reach it can write any tuple. And because Agicap, like I said, is a multi-product platform, we don't want actually developers or services from the payment service to write payment-related, only them can write payment-related relation, and only, for example, the cash collection service can write cash collection relation, and so on. So we build like a little security layer in Rebecca to prevent teams for writing tuples that are not in their scopes. So we did that with OAuth scopes, actually. And the third reason was for what we call write add-ons. These are like automatic side effects when writing tuples. So in our model, for example, fine-grained permission use end condition. And for example, when we have a relation prepare payments, it requires being an administrator and having the right payment module relation. So if the module payment is not active because you didn't subscribe to the payment module in our platform, the module is considered inactive and you don't have the right accesses. So you are an administrator, but because the module is not accessible, you didn't pay for it in your subscription, you don't have the right tuple on this module. So being an administrator is one thing, and having the write and read permission on modules is another thing. So that's why we did write add-ons. So when we activate or deactivate a module, which is it's actually rare. It's not often that we did that. We have write add-ons that say, okay, so this company, this organization now has the right to as the payment module. So we take all the members and administrator and we add them read and write tuples. So this is what our add-ons are for. Another example, which is maybe simpler, is for example, when you have what we call mirror relations. So, for example, an entity is in an organization, and an organization has entities. So we have a relation entity off on an organization, and the reverse relation is organization off on the entity. The right add-on is when you write entity off, automatically Rebecca will create the reverse organization of tuple. So it maintains consistency in our system without all the teams knowing about this complexity. Don't hesitate to ask me questions if you have questions. I can stop and explain it a little bit more. Okay. So we use the modular model feature. So actually, each product team owns their FGA file. So the patterns are standardized. So every product has can read, can write, can access relation. So this consistency makes it very easy for new teams to add their permission, because actually adding a permission is just like, okay, so I work in the payment module and I want people that have the right permission on this module. So I will make a tuple relation, called prepare payment, and it's just prepare payment can write payment module. So it's simple, it's easy. We currently have 26 model files and almost 100 test files. So one use case that I like with OpenFGA is the churn management use case. So we introduced this use case after introducing OpenFGA, and it was very powerful because before OpenFGA, handling churn would have meant to every service implementing their own, is this customer still active check? It was in all services, is this customer still active? And every services was implementing their authorization logic on their own. And with OpenFGA, we added a relation to the model, and every permission that should require an active subscription just include and member from active subscription. So when we have an active subscription, we insert a tuple active subscription, and we put it everywhere in a relation that needs an active subscription. So when a customer churns, we remove one tuple, entity Agicap, active subscription entity Agicap, and all write permissions are automatically revoked across all products. And read operations still work. User can see their data. And if they resubscribe again, so if we churn them back, we did a win churn, we just add the tuple back. So we put active subscription again, and all the permission are back to what they had before. So this will have taken weeks of cross-team coordination. And with OpenFGA, it was just a tuple to add, just write and delete this tuple, and some relation to modify in the model. So it was days. So it was great for us. The next use case is for our support team, our support engineers. So before giving support temporary access was quite manual with no automatic expiration. And now we use OpenFGA conditions. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's very powerful. So the access tuple has an expiration timestamp, and every check passes the current time. So when it expires, access is just gone. So no cron jobs, no cleanup scripts, just support teams and support agents, support engineers. They get accesses to products module through has temporary access relation, and we can selectively exclude temporary access from critical relation operation. For example, we have a relation which is sending follow-up emails to customers, and this is written with sending follow-up emails administrator, but not as temporary access, for example. So again, it was quite easy for us with conditional conditions to add time limited access to our product module entities, etc. So how did we adapted OpenFGA to our engineering practice? So actually, what's really important for us is that we treat the authorization model like any other code. So it has its own repository, mandatory test, CI/CD pipeline, etc., etc. So basically, our model is very like the center of all of this. And also in our CI/CD pipeline, we generate type-safe constants. So teams never have to hardcode relation name as strings. They just import our NuGet package with relation, and it's all automatic. So when someone modifies the model, it creates a pull request in our library repository to update the relations that are created. And then it releases a new version of this NuGet repository, library, sorry. And then teams just have to update the library so they have all the relation with type-safe constants. So we did a lot of automation to really help teams adding new permission easily. And we have what we call a sandbox model. So because we have this facade behind OpenFGA, we have the model in production, and we also have another model which is called sandbox. So in our model repository, we have actually two models, sandbox and production model. And when we want to try new things, but we are not sure it will be okay or not, we have a feature flag actually, and we can say to Rebecca to ask OpenFGA for the classic model or to ask for the sandbox model. So because in OpenFGA you can have all your historic, you can have a lot of models, and for us in Rebecca, because we have this facade, it's transparent to user. But us with a feature flag, we can say, okay, all our users are using now the sandbox model, and if we did something wrong, we can go back to the production model easily. So it's great for testing things. So scaling, actually it evolved a lot. It had evolved a lot over time. So we started with Rebecca and OpenFGA in the same pod as a sidecar for minimal latency. But we found that if OpenFGA crash, it took down Rebecca too, and vice versa. So also we couldn't scale them independently, so we split them into separate pods, and this lets us run more Rebecca instances while keeping fewer OpenFGA pod, which is better because it improves the OpenFGA cache hit rate. We also added read replicas to separate read and write workloads. Why? Because with the temporary accesses, we had a lot of automation with staff access granting, and it were causing write load that impacted check latency. So we needed to do this separation. And also we did that because now we have MCP servers and our data team that are checking data on our read replica and not impacting the check latency. Yes. And I talk about this. What was important for us was to make authorization self-service for all teams. So we have 15 or more teams, 15, 16, I don't remember, teams. And this is what makes it scale organizationally. Teams don't need to be OpenFGA experts. They need to be model expert or model expert to understand how we built it, etc. But they just follow the pattern, they write tests and get reviewed. And the generated code, like I said, gives them type-safe accesses. So it's actually great for teams because they are all autonomous. They can all create permission. It's just one pull request. We still kept the teams that built the system, so the foundation teams at Agicap, my team. We keep them as pull request reviewers to make sure that our model is consistent and it's okay. But globally, it's just reviews because all teams are now autonomous and can add a permission very easily. And yes. Yes. Also, we made like authorization attribute to make it a one-liner to protect an endpoint. So this is an example in C#. We had an attribute, a resource access attribute. So for this example, I have a authorization model. So user type, so to check a relation on a user, and I take the ID from the claim, so the claim in the token. I'm checking the prepare payment relation on the entity, and the entity ID is provided from the root in the REST API. So it's simple as that to protect your endpoint. You just import your NuGet library. All the relation prepare payments is already in another NuGet library, which is a type-safe access constant, sorry. And you just add this on your endpoint, and it's okay. It's checking the relation. In numbers. So we've been running OpenFGA in production for about 2.5 years now. The model is actively evolving. We are at version 3.73, so which is multiple releases per week. And actually, the key metric for us is that adding new permissions is now self-service, like I said, and takes days, even hours sometimes, and not weeks. So if I had to give one piece of advice, it would be for us, for my company and our context. It's not for everyone, but for us, it was to invest in the developer experience around OpenFGA. So the facade, the code generation, the testing pipeline, and that's what makes it possible for 15 teams to use it effectively. So yeah, treat the model as code, standardized patterns, and use the use of OpenFGA condition also. And yeah, model changes is better than code changes. So actually, we are not just evolving the model. We don't need to touch the code. So it's great. And don't be afraid to evolve your deployment. So we did a lot of change in our deployment. We went from side pod to separated pod for fault isolation. We tried a lot of things, and now it's pretty stable. But yeah, it was a great experimentation. So thank you. Do you have questions?
I had one question. How did you encode the ReadChanges authorization, like security rules? So that's like authorization on top of OpenFGA, but how did you encode those security policies?
Yes, it's a great question. We did it like 2.5 years ago. I don't know if we will still do it the same way today. Actually, what we did is it's pretty simple. We have a file which is in a vault, secured in Vault, and it's actually the name of the module, and we have one module, one scope. So, for example, my module cache management, we gave it a scope cache management module in our identity server, like OAuth scope. So when someone tries to write a tuple through Rebecca, it gives scopes with the client credential authorization system. And if you have the scope cache flow management, you can modify this relation. If you have this scope and you try to modify a relation from module payment, you will not have the good scope, so we will tell you forbidden. It's simple as that.
Cool. Yeah, it's pretty nifty. Thank you.
So just to clarify, you're using the client credentials to get tokens to call FGA, and you have a client in client credentials. I think you're using Azure, right, as your IDP. So you have a client there for each team, and you define the scopes that you need for each team based on the modules they can write to.
Yeah. So for write operation, this is
Right.
for write. So each service has a client credential authorization flow between Rebecca and the service with scopes. So they can only modify tuples that are in their context, in their scope. But for check, because it's internal into a cluster, for only checking relation, we don't have any authentication for faster.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome. Thank you very much. More questions for Pauline? Sorry.
Tyler, you can go first.
My question, you had a slide on sandbox models.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could share more details about how you went about actually setting that up to do sandbox models.
Yeah, so we have our authorization model is on a separate repository. Okay, so we actually have one directory which is called model and one directory which is called sandbox model. Okay, and in our CI/CD pipeline, when we deploy the model to the OpenFGA, we deploy both model at the same time. So model. Classic model and model sandbox. So they're all deployed in OpenFGA. So when you add a model in OpenFGA, it gives you an ID of this model, and we stock this ID in our Helm chart. So the Helm chart of Rebecca knows have this property which is called model ID and sandbox model ID. And when Rebecca makes a request to OpenFGA, it takes this ID to give it to OpenFGA to say, hey, I'm putting a check request on this model ID. And when
every request.
And when our feature flies is active, Rebecca takes the sandbox model ID to give it to OpenFGA.
Nifty. Cool. Thank you.
Pauline, I had a question about all the FGA files, so like 26, and then many teams. So obviously the model's reviewed, but how do you help to maintain consistency? Do you have like set of best practices that all teams are supposed to follow, or is there enforced like in the pipeline for the change during a review?
Yes, we have a lot of tests. We test our model. Like I said, we have more than 90 test files. So when you modify a model, if you do something wrong, the test won't pass. So this is our first security nest, and then we ask teams to always write test when they are changing something in the model. And we have a review, a pull request review, and we did like a coding game with all our teams to explain how it works and to give them guidelines on how to do a pull request on our authorization model. And also we have like hooks on GitHub that checks that everything is okay when the PR is submitted.
Okay, that's nice. I was wondered if like if you had if it was like something to affect the model linter, or if like if there was a tool like that that would be useful for large teams, so that way it would help to take some of the burden off of like manually maintaining consistency.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the test and all the guidelines and all the hooks we put in GitHub in our pipeline, in our pipeline to prevent for going wild.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. So thank you very much, Pauline. This was great, and really we learned a lot, and I think the community will learn a lot for all the things you shared. And I won't share my slides now because I have a surprise guest. It won't be a surprise for people who are in the OpenFGA. It will be a surprise for the internal team because they don't know that someone was going to present this. He just showed me this in our one-on-one, and I told him you should show this to the team because it's pretty cool in the community meeting. So I have Ragged. So he was working over the weekend. Weekends.
Hey everyone, surprise. So this is a very, very like rough kind of showcase or demo of what we're trying to do. But just a quick summary of some of the, I think, problems you've seen, and like especially if you tried contributing to SDKs. You've seen us, we're very strict about a few things. One, we want SDK consistency in terms of SDKs should function the same way, should have the same feature set. We try to get like auto-generation gets us part of the way. We don't auto-generate everything yet. Unfortunately, at some point we will head there. But more than auto-generation is how do we test our feature set? Like and some problems we have is not all PRs are reviewed by all the people. So some functionality goes into like the JS SDK that didn't go into Go because like whoever contributed only to the JS. Some things are missed. This is especially true when you're spinning up, like someone's contributing on your SDK. So let's say someone's doing the PHP SDK now, or the Ruby or the Rust. How do they know what features do we support? How do we know what features do we support, and how are they across all the repos? So we've been trying to do some of this, noting down what features and trying to balance it out. But Andres, and we've been working on this separately, but recently, like a question was raised, like, is the retry, like, are we sure the retry logic is working? And this comes up a lot. If you look at our GitHub org, there's a ton of just issues around like, no, this is how it should work. No, this is how it should work. Just like a sample, like, so let's say we fix this issue. How do we make sure to fix it not only on the Go SDK, not only on the JS SDK, that it is consistent across all? And we can trust unit tests, but unit tests are like, if you don't write a new unit test over on the particular SDK, you're gonna miss it. So that's the idea behind this feature, which is having consistent writing our tests in a like in a BDD style, but crucially, it's not per SDK. Writing our tests in one feature file or multiple feature files, but like the same consolidated feature files. Writing our mocks or like the mappings for wire mock in the, again, one consolidated file. And per SDK, all we have to do is implement the runner. So the part that interprets the tests and calls the wire mock API. This is a very rough draft. Like it's not like you're not gonna be able to see it pushed yet, but we were running it already showcased a bunch of issues that we have that in terms of the cross SDK support and specifically around the retry logic. So again, the way you define is like you'd have a scenario. Okay, you have per request overrides. It should do X, or in this case, if you say the max retry is 1, it should override the default, the global. We have two problems. One, some SDKs don't support this feature, don't support per request overrides, which is, I think, Go and .NET. So we need to add support for that. But the other one is some of them implement them incorrectly. But now, because we have this sort of shared test structure, what we can do is just, I'm going to run JS because it's the only one passing 100%. But basically, it will run these and it'll say, okay, based on these, all of them is working. Which means now, if you're contributing a new SDK, you don't have to figure out or write the test from scratch and miss a few crucial points. And even more importantly, as maintainers, how do we approve? How, when we give, okay, this SDK is good enough now, is correct? How do we know unless we go and like actually check each and every thing? Like, we're gonna miss things. If we ask AI, I'll say, you're absolutely right, everything's good. So there must be some balance here. So and this is where this is. So here we're running the Go. It's running the exact same test. We're not redefining them. And it actually noted a few bugs that we now need to fix. Same for like Java. And this is right now, we're starting with the readline logic, but the idea is all our functionality, how you configure the SDK. How do you call check? Is the check working? What happens if your IDP returns an error? Are you retrying properly? Do we support scopes? Like, for example, scope is something we added recently. We used to support only audiences. Recently in OIDC flow, we start supporting scopes, but again, not in all SDKs. So being able to keep track of that makes our job as maintainers easier and the community's job, because right now, when you see things not working, even though it's, hey, it was working, the JS, why isn't it working here? Sometimes it's not a bug. Sometimes we just didn't implement it. And this helps us, like, us understand that this needs to be implemented, and the community know that this is pending. Hey, you want to contribute? Things like this. And yes, so this already showcased bugs in the .NET, the Python, the Java SDK, and the Go SDK. So it's obviously like giving a return on investment. That's
Awesome.
pretty much it. Yeah.
We of course can now use AI to get those scenario tests written based on the integrations tests we already have, and get the adapters written based automatically, so we can make some progress there with AI too, and that can help us. And then we are getting a lot of help from the community on SDKs, and I think they will give us more ways to help, because now we have a lot of scenario tests to write, and also more ways to validate that what we're doing is correct, and more confident when we accept PR. So thank you, Ragged, for spending your weekends having fun with this, and hopefully we can get value from it. I'm telling Ragged, please just merge something, because those weekend projects tends to be there with always one more thing you can do, right? And I think we can get value from this and take it from there. Okay, cool. That's it. Let me go back to the slides. There's no much else, but I think this was
just while we're talking about is one more thing not related we just want to share. You already all probably know it, but just FYI, we formalized the idea of what versions we support. We do our best and like try not to drop support for old versions. We're trying to move away from that because it's hindering us a lot in terms of how can we update our module, like our dependencies, and using new language features. So just right now, it only affects our tooling, but just FYI, if it's not supported upstream, it likely will not be supported by us. If it's end of life, if the language runtime is end of life, we will not support it. So just to share that. Sorry, Andres.
No, sounds good. There's not much more in the agenda. I will just remind me about showing a couple of things too. So we just merged a few documents with best practices about a few topics. One is this one. So there are different ways to model ABAC in OpenFGA based on is data that you want stored as attributes somehow in the FGA store, or is data you're going to provide as part of the request. So we have different ways to do those things in FGA. So we kind of went through the scenarios here. So if you are interested, take a look and provide some feedback. And also, we also polished this one. It used to have a different name, was about best practice about modeling. And that we see a lot of customers trying to do models like, let me show you the bad example. Do I have a bad example here? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this is. So some people try to model like a resource as a single type, right? And everything is a resource. And that can work in some scenarios. But in general, we see it work better when you define like a specific types per resource. That helps the algorithm. It makes the model more clear because here I know the document has this permission, can print, and the folder doesn't. And here you need to have a superset of permissions. And similar things with entities is like you can define just rolled entity resource. This can model any use case, right? And but that's not what you want. If you want to use FGA, the idea is to try to model as close as your domain possible because it makes it more readable, more easy to understand, more easy to maintain, and faster. Okay? So we're trying to capture some of these things. There's another pattern here, which is having a permission type and then a has permission relation, right? I've seen that also, and it's also, when I see that in a model, I know this might not perform well, right? So I'm going to add something about that use case to here to help customers, if they can, pick the better approach. Sometimes there's no other ways to model this way for many reasons, but if you can, it's usually better. Okay, good. So in our list of what's going on, the things we usually, so we are going to have so we've been working, as you know, in list objects improvements for a while. We are close to merge them enabled by default. That should happen in the next week or two. We have all the PR almost ready. Usually a big performance improvement in list objects in general. And the other one we're working and going to release hopefully soon is this one, support for Zen, which is a new standard in authorization world. It's going to usually be, I think it's going to be helpful, not for if you're building applications, you're not going to use the Zen API instead of the OpenFGA one, because OpenFGA is going to be more flexible and it's better if you are building your own apps. But if you want to use a gateway that has support for Zen and you want to plug OpenFGA, for example, that will be easier. If you have an IDP that helps you connect with the Zen provider to provide list of permissions, that will be easier. Now there's a chance with MCP gateways, we'll have a way to connect to Zen services to provide access to tools for users. So there's a lot of an ecosystem of tools that might be start using Zen as a standard interface to make authorization checks that we want to be ready to connect to. And so we want to work on that one. It's not hard. It's just kind of wrapping it up. Usual request of starting the project, adding you as an adopter if you're doing it, and things like that. And I don't know if you have any more questions before we adjourn. Comments? Okay, thank you very much. Great meeting. Thanks for everyone for contributing, especially for you, to you, Pauline, and see you the next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Polly.